Okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and get going. So for today's Elevate HR, it's all things employee relations. We have Brad Mathers here to present. Brad, thank you for coming, and I will go ahead and toss it over to you.
Thank you, Brendan. Nice to see everyone. I also have Michelle Padilla from my office, who's going to be um, giving a portion of the discussion today. And um, this is my first Elevate HR meeting, so I might uh, mess up the format of things a little bit, but we're given uh, some idea of what of sort of topics that people wanted to talk about, but we also kind of wanted to mention some topics that we are getting frequent questions on, or are maybe sort of some seasonal questions as well. So um, I don't think we're going to take up the full 2 hours, but we'll see. Maybe there's robust discussion, and that's uh, yeah, and that would be great. So, all right, Brendan, on behalf of everyone, can you see my slides right now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Yeah, great. So as Brendan mentioned, kind of all things employee relations. So Michelle and I are going to kind of go over a number of topics, and uh, I'm not sure if we have a moderator today, but I would love to know if there are any questions kind of as we go, and feel free to pause us and stop us if there's a question in the moment. Happy to slow down and go through that. So our office that Michelle and I are in Central HR, we perform a number of different functions. Here are some of them, or most of them. And as you can see, we do a whole lot. And probably what we speak to most of you about are issues around performance management, progressive discipline, and separations and the like. But we also handle a number of different processes for the campus: classified staff, formal issue resolution processes, progressive discipline processes. We handle all unemployment claims for the campus. And while the system leave team is processing leave applications, we are still managing a portion of that, and obviously still managing a big chunk of the education for the campus on that. And we also the Americans with Disability Act coordinator, or ADA coordinator, also resides in our office, and we have a rather newly hired ADA coordinator. His name is Stephen Blackwell. He's been with us for about 3 weeks, and we're thrilled to have him on board. Technically, the faculty and staff threat assessment team also involves our office quite a bit, and our CHRO, Adrian Howarth-Moore. So we're your one-stop shop for a whole lot of different things. I know you got a training last month on family, but this is kind of the issue that just kind of won't won't sort of go away, or we're getting continual questions on family. So I thought I'd just spend a brief moment just kind of going over that. So as I'm sure most of you, or almost all of you, are aware, this is a new type of insurance that's available to employees within Colorado that became effective January 1st of this year. Those of us who have been employed longer than that, we've been paying into it since January 1 of 2023. So that's how it is funded, is with employee contributions over the last 15 months. And we had an option here to either go with the state plan or to go to run the program ourselves. We chose to run the program ourselves, and that appears to be the good choice, because the state is already out of money when it comes to family. So we're still funded, and even though we're seeing a higher volume of applications than we anticipated, our program is running pretty smoothly, all things considered. uh, all employees who physically work in Colorado are eligible for family. So that does not include remote employees who do not reside in Colorado. They are not eligible. But basically, with the exception of a few job codes, all employees are eligible for this program, to include postdocs, student employees, grad assistants, and temporary faculty. And this and people are eligible basically day one of employment. There's a job protection piece that is akin to family medical leave job protection that kicks in after 180 days of employment at CU. So what this program provides is 12 weeks of partial wage replacement, up to 16 if it's an irregular pregnancy. And so a large percentage, depending on a sliding scale of salary, is funded, and the unfunded percentage can be made whole through accrued leave that our employees can apply to make whole there. Family runs concurrently with FML, parental leave, and short-term disability. Here's some reasons that someone might apply for family. Very similar to family medical leave, but those last couple of bullets are what might make it more distinctive. Arrangements for a family member's military employment, and so-called safe leave, obtaining safe housing, care, legal assistance in response to intimate partner violence, stalking, sexual assault, or sexual abuse. And it goes beyond family medical leave in terms of just your own medical condition or a family member's serious medical condition. It could be another sort of significant person in an employee's life, which could mean a roommate or a neighbor or something like that. So as of January 1st, the system office has been processing leave applications, and employees apply through the leave portal. And we are seeing, that process sort of unfold here. The piece that our team is still responsible for are cases that began in 2023, we're still managing, and cases where job protection has run out, so family and/or family medical leave have expired. The system office is handing those back to our team to manage from that point on, or anything that involves potential separation as well, we're handling. So it's been an interesting experience, sort of understanding the delineation of responsibility there.
Hey, Brad, speaking of that, we had a question in the chat about who approves the leave rows. Some of them are approved by central leave, or some of them are approved by you guys. Is that?
That is correct.
Okay.
It's sometimes it can feel like it's case by case, but generally speaking, we're approving rows where the leave began before January 1st. And so we were tracking it already, or the protection has run out. Family or FML has run out. But there's also been some instances where we've just been asked to help out. Good.
Okay.
Good
Thanks.
question. Sure. So I just some additional general sort of leave information. Here's some just general sick leave information. We have been getting a lot of questions about sort of when do we ask for a med cert. We generally suggest when we're after 3 consecutive days out is when you want to prompt the employee to apply for leave, or if they sort of refuse to do that, provide you with a doctor's note just to understand what the leave situation is like. I will just also add this question that we get often is what happens if we suspect leave abuse? Okay, an employee is out every Monday or every Friday, cocktail flu or what have you. if a supervisor suspects leave abuse, a supervisor can request a doctor's note after a singular absence. Did we get some questions on that?
No, not on the sick time.
Okay. So obviously sometimes sick leave morphs into family medical leave, and I'm going to ask Michelle to talk to you about FML.
Thanks, Brad. Good afternoon, everyone. I may have spoken to several of you in the past when it was related to FML. So as Brad had mentioned earlier, if any sick leave is, if somebody is out more than 3 consecutive days, yes, you want to start the process. Initially, just, talk to them about the potential need for leave. If that is the case, then they're going to start the application process through the employee portal. However, there's if the employee is admitted to the hospital, that's an automatic FML eligible event, any hospitalization stay. If the sick leave is needed for any type of qualifying event, those types of events would be like surgery. There's sometimes where I've had individuals that would reach out to me and ask me if they would, if FML would be pertain to their case because they're having surgery and their surgery is not a serious health condition. However, under the FML guidelines, they're incapacitated and then they still need some sort of treatment, whether it's physical therapy. So they would be eligible for FML if they meet the federal requirements under FML. The times that they would not be eligible for FML is if it's elective or cosmetic surgery like LASIK or PRK. I do say that with a caveat because sometimes there are situations where, you would see in the past, we don't necessarily see those med certs anymore, that the med cert comes from a cosmetic surgeon. However, their request may be medically necessary, therefore they could be eligible for FML under whatever their request may be. Thank you. As a reminder, FML is a federal law. So what that means is FML is only job protection. It's not a function of pay. So where the employee's function of pay would come from would be their sick or vacation in the past, solely their sick and vacation. And FML is granted for the birth of a child, to care for a newborn child, the placement of a child for adoption or foster care with that employee, for the employee to take time off to help immediate family member. And under the FML regulations, it's defined as spouse, child, or a parent. It's a little bit different under family. The regulations defined as who you could care for is a little bit different than FML. And also to take medical leave for yourself as well if you have a serious health condition, even if it's intermittent leave usage as well. So the eligibility, as I mentioned earlier, for classified staff, the classified individuals must have 12 months of state and university or university service and 1,250 hours worked within the last year. University staff is 12 months worked and 1,250 hours as well. Faculty 9 to 12 month appointments automatically meet the requirements, the minimum hours, but they still must meet the 12-month requirement of university staff. Keep in mind, part-time employees under that are exempt employees with a 0.5 or greater appointment must have the 1,250 hours worked in the last 12 months as well. And workman's comp does run concurrent with FML as well. Finally, we do get this question where individuals are asking, or departments are asking, they have an employee that just needs to take a mental health day. That's perfectly fine. They can take, they can be approved for a mental health day. However, if there's not documentation on file currently, then the employee must use their vacation leave instead of their sick leave. But if there is documentation on file, that employee can use their sick leave. If the sick leave that they're requesting, the documentation we do have on file is pertained to the request. And that is all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Brad.
Thank you. Any questions so far before we dive into performance management?
There is a question from Oscar that was asking, is there somewhere we can direct the employee to find that language? I'm not too sure what language that is, though. Oscar, could you expand on that, please?
Sure. I just had an employee just basically asking where they can go and find that same information that we're talking about today.
About family medical leave,
Oh,
or
I apologize about the 4 consecutive days on when the note is needed.
okay. I'll tell you what, let's connect after this, and we'll point you in the direction where you can find that language.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you.
It looks like we have another question from Jackie. What would documentation on file look like for mental health, and what is the overlap with confidentiality and ADA?
Right. So for this last topic about mental health, so the documentation, it could be a medical certificate, it could be a doctor's note, something else, something from a medical provider that states that the leave is related to a medical condition. What we most often hear when it comes to mental health days is the employee, I just need to recharge. I need a break. Can I have Friday off? I need a mental health day. And so as a supervisor, you're just trying to understand kind of what form of leave that is. So you can ask a couple of qualifying questions, such as, do you need Friday off because of a medical condition, or do you just need a break? And the rest of, sorry, Brendan, the rest of Jackie's question, ADA.
What is the overlap with confidentiality and ADA?
Right. So that's a really good question, because we don't like supervisors to actually see the medical documentation. So we would prefer that it goes to one of you, the HR business partner within the unit, to sort of put your eyes on that and translate to the supervisor, hey, this is sick leave, or hey, this is vacation leave. Ideally, we don't want employees handing doctor's notes to supervisors, because it can potentially give rise to a retaliation claim later. So, and in terms of ADA, accommodations are given on the basis of a medical condition as well. So in situations where there's an approved accommodation, there's underlying medical basis for that. So perhaps the mental health day is related to an accommodation. But if the need for leave is sort of substantiated by medical documentation on record, that is sufficient to code it as sick leave.
Looks like those are all the questions. Oh, there's one more question. Can we see a guideline for or policies page that we can refer to?
Which policy? I would ask. We have about 254 active policies at CU.
Nalia, the sick leave policy?
The sick leave policy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That would be APS 5062, and I'm just going to make a note to drop that later on. Okay, good questions. Oh, they're still rolling in.
Looks like Michelle said say PS 5062 and Nali said thank you. And it looks like those are all the questions in the chat.
Okay, friendly chat. All right, let's talk a little bit about performance management. I'm just going to kind of hit some high notes here. We have a whole 3.5-hour training on performance management that we run a handful of times a year that you can attend if you're interested. But generally speaking here, I just want to give you a couple of takeaways. Here's just kind of a bird's eye view of what our cycle looks like for really any of our employees, classified staff, faculty, et cetera. Really starts with planning phase. So most of you, your units are faculty and staff. Some of you may have a couple of classified staff within, but for the most part, you're just wrapping up performance for 2023 and kind of turning the page to performance for 2024. So in terms of this sort of life cycle graphic, if you've turned the page, then you're up here for planning for 2024. Now, as I'm about to share with you, this is completely optional for faculty and university staff, the planning phase. We encourage it, we recommend it, and we wish that everyone did it, but it's not encoded in any sort of policy, or it's not a requirement. It's simply something that the supervisor can choose to do if they want to emphasize a more robust performance management program for their employees. But if you're going to do that, then you're planning right now for the rest of 2024. So I always like to think of it in terms of you having conversations with your employee, stating, here's what I'm going to be rating you on this time next year. And also asking the employee, what sorts of goals are important to you that perhaps we can weave into the plan. Throughout the year, your supervisors ideally giving continuous coaching and feedback. That may include some training. Okay, again, this is optional for staff and faculty. Then come at the end of the year, you're evaluating your employees based on how they did for the calendar year. And that evaluation is the primary basis for merit pay each July. So that's kind of the life cycle of performance management. Now, I know some of you have classified staff in your departments, so a quick glimpse as to their cycle. It's a little bit different, August 1st through July 31st. And we're actually in our first year where just that is the cycle, that 12 months right there, August through July. So there's a classified staff cycle will end this July 31st. We'll ask for evaluations. That should say September 1, 2024. So we give you a month basically from the end of the cycle. We'll give you all of August and then ask for evaluations September 1st. And then we kind of give you about a month to do plans for the following cycle. So that should read October 1st, 2024. Sorry for the typos. Classified staff must receive a plan, a coaching session, and an evaluation each year. Those are all required. And if you're going to only do one coaching session, we suggest you do it kind of in the middle of the year, about 6 months in or so. For staff and faculty, basically everyone else, we're on a calendar year cycle, January 1 through December 31. We suggest that evaluations be done by March 1st. Those of you who are lucky enough to get to fill out spreadsheets with performance ratings and such, we usually ask for those March 15th of each year. Okay, again, plans are recommended, not required. The bare minimum for every supervisor is to give a rating, a 1 through 5 rating, and to complete the single page public rating form. That's the requirement. The low bar requirement. oftentimes we hear from departments who are many of you or perhaps leadership within departments that are frustrated by the sort of distribution of scores. And I'll share with you that on this campus, the most common rating that's given to staff and faculty is a 5. The second most common rating is a 4. The third most common rating is a 3, and so on. Now, I think we've gotten better at that distribution. Dean Riley certainly emphasized that, but there are a couple of units that we get their ratings in, and it's almost straight 5s. And so while we allow departments to basically write their own philosophies around performance management, and we actually, we're not going to really interfere with that really at all unless we're asked to opine on it. When we are asked to opine, we kind of like to highlight the danger that's involved, potential danger, when your unit is handing out almost all 5s or almost all 4s and 5s, because we have seen over time kind of the downward stream effect of that. So where it kind of handcuffs you a bit is, if everyone's getting a 5, then it's hard to distinguish who your actual highest performers are from perhaps your lower performing employees. The rating itself kind of loses its meaning. If you look at what a 5 means in terms of the actual scale, it's a very high bar. To get an outstanding, you have to contribute a unique, you have to make a unique contribution during the year. You're basically, just every single day, just, absolutely crushing your work and really not making any mistakes. It's a very high bar. But if all your employees receive a 5 every year, it can be hard to sort of to emphasize what the language in the ratings means. And when it comes time to maybe promote somebody within a team, okay, and everyone's getting a 5, those who don't get the promotion feel kind of spurned by that. Why didn't I get it? I'm just as good. I've been receiving the same ratings as the person who got the promotion. Furthermore, your best employees, and employees have a knack of sort of understanding this, but your best employees can look across the table and say, I'm doing more work than Brad here. I got a 5, Brad got a 5. Why am I still here? Why am I going to hang around if I'm going to get the exact same reward as the person who's not doing as much work, simply because they're getting rated the same? So on an infinite timeline, your best employees leave and your lowest performers stay. Because why would you leave if you're a low performer but getting rated as outstanding? Also here, when it comes time to hold an employee accountable, and they've been receiving 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, the employee can feel like something has drastically changed. Perhaps there's another reason for being held accountable. Maybe it's a conspiracy. We see an increase in all sorts of claims: discrimination, harassment, hostile work environment, etc. Okay.
Looks like we do have a question. What happens when a supervisor gives a 5 and the HR manager knows the rating is not warranted? Should something be done? And then if so, what steps should they take?
That's interesting. Kristen, are you asking, as you being the HR manager and you're sort of gathering these ratings and
Hi, Brad. No, I had a discussion with my former HR manager who felt that an employee did not deserve that 5, that high rating, and didn't really know how to, talked with the supervisor saying, we really want to make sure that that is the correct score. and basically the supervisor poo-pooed them and said, nope, it's fine. So just, when we know that there are lots of mistakes being made, they're not perfect. What do as a HR manager, what do you do?
Yeah. But you have to balance a couple of things there, because it is supervisor discretion on what rating to give. And ultimately, a supervisor can be overruled by the appointing authority or hiring authority, or, chair, dean, section head, etc. We don't necessarily want to see that happen, but, we want to have supervisors, feel like they're the ones responsible and accountable for these ratings. I would sort of fall back on kind of what is your internal departmental philosophy on performance management, and do you have one? And if you don't, I think it's always a good discussion, and this is the perfect time of year to have that discussion, by the way, kind of like, how are we going to rate people for 2024 this time next year, when we're sort of in winter, spring of 2025? Are we going to be sort of similarly frustrated by that sort of a situation? I really think it starts right about now, when the leadership of a unit says, okay, here's our sort of philosophy on performance management. Here's what you need to do to get a 5. Here's what you need to get a 4, 3, so on. And if somebody gets a performance improvement plan or a letter of expectation, or there's some sort of situation during that year, they shouldn't be getting a 5, or they shouldn't be getting a 4. Again, departments can arrive at their own philosophy around that. But when that is well defined, then Kristen, somebody in your situation, your conversation with the supervisor in that situation can be about how that rating smacks against the unit philosophy about performance management. So that way you're not having the conversation by yourself. You sort of are doing it within the context of, here's our sort of our unit philosophy on how we rate people.
Excellent. Thank you, Brad. That's I think we're moving down that direction. So that plays in well with being able to have maybe our chair more involved in staff evaluations and ratings versus only the HR manager. If the HR manager is getting pushback, then we can bring in that. But thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
If you don't mind, Brad, I just wanted to say, this is Lindsay in orthopedics. We did something similar, and it was kind of driven by our DFA this past year, in terms of more clearly defining those scores. And I think it really helped, because we used to have a lot of people who would just do like 5s across the board, and it seemed like they weren't really taking the time to do a good evaluation of that person. And I think this year, after more clearly defining and communicating those scores and what they actually meant, we did see less of that. So I'm happy to share kind of what we put together if you want to send me an email or Teams message.
That would be great. Thank you very much, Lindsay. I appreciate it. I will do that.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Lindsay. Yeah, what you'll find is when that becomes more defined, then the ratings have a lot more meaning to them. Okay, we're going to get into a little bit more of sort of employee relations and performance issues, because shockingly, not many of you call us when everything's going great. You're welcome to drop us a line and say, Brad, just want to let you know everything is going great. Typically, it's when you're dealing with some sort of a situation. So on the heels of evaluations, here's sort of some subsequent process that may follow or should follow. So for classified staff who are below expectations, or they get a 1 out of 5 or a 2 out of 5, that supervisor has the discretion to do either a corrective action or performance improvement plan. They must do one of those, corrective action or performance improvement plan, if it's a 1 or 2 out of 5. It may even be a disciplinary action if we're talking about consecutive years of below expectations. But please reach out to us if you're in that situation. for university staff who get a 1 out of 5 or a 2 out of 5. There's no required process, but we typically recommend either a performance improvement plan or a letter of expectation. But that's supervisor discretion, and in some ways kind of, you know, it kind of, runs the question of what is your departmental philosophy about what you do with employees in this situation. Faculty are a little bit different because there's a regent policy that if a faculty member receives a rating of below expectations or fails to meet expectations, that's a 1 or a 2, they must get a PIA, Performance Improvement Agreement. And that is a document that is between the faculty member and their supervisor that is oftentimes drafted by the receiving faculty member. And it's typically a longer plan that runs through the rest of that calendar year that is used in the following evaluation as a look back to sort of say, okay, I gave you a 1 or 2 last year. You did the PIA. Let's track that and see how you did when it comes to rating, for the following year. Now, there's an option here for supervisors of faculty in this situation. That supervisor can, on top of giving the mandated PIA, can give a performance improvement plan or a letter of expectation in conjunction with the PIA. Okay, because oftentimes those supervisors, they don't want to wait 12 months to have to sort of, see where things shook out. They may want to check in 30 days or 60 days or 90 days or 6 months. So that's supervisor discretion, but just wanted to make sure you knew that was an option. Here's kind of a rubric for classified progressive discipline. And kind of wanted to put it in a continuum. So you can think of it in terms of kind of up here in the gold, informal, internal. These are the sorts of processes that, we may never hear about because you're just handling it within your units with, because you are helping your supervisors in the moment when a performance issue come up, how to sort of manage them informally and hopefully averting any sort of formal process. So when a supervisor observes a performance issue with a classified employee, should bring that person in, have a verbal conversation, describe the concern or the issue or the incident, try to make that feedback as direct and concrete as possible. Okay, so for example, Brad, on February 12th, 2023, we were in a team meeting and you used an expletive. This type of language is unprofessional, below our standard of communication, ... Okay, my expectation is that you not use that sort of language in team meetings or in the course and conduct of your business. Ask the employee what their perspective is. Set the expectations, end the meeting, and follow up the meeting with an email that memorializes the discussion and the expectations. Okay, that is how you informally address a performance issue, really with anyone, but this is classified. We're just focusing on classified. When you want to involve employee relations performance, central HR, is when you potentially have to start drafting documents. Okay, so there is an informal document that's called a letter of instruction that you can give to classified employees. It doesn't move the needle in terms of progressive discipline, but it can be useful in certain contexts. You may be talking about a corrective action, which is a bit more serious because a corrective action does go in the employee's personnel file. And there's typically an agreement in terms of length of time that employee is given to improve, and then a check-in date to see if the employee has improved as hoped and expected. if that problem persists, okay, a supervisor of classified staff may choose to escalate it to potentially giving a disciplinary action. Now, a corrective action is basically a formal written document that describes the problem, but it does not affect an employee's pay status or tenure. Disciplinary action, by definition, does impact pay status or tenure. And to pursue a disciplinary action, the issue gets kicked up to the appointing authority within that unit. And there is a meeting held, which is called a 610 meeting, based off of State Personnel Board Rule 6-10. The appointing authority holds that meeting. So if we're this far along, the supervisor's actually not even in this meeting. The appointing authority is in the meeting, the employee's in the meeting, and someone from ERP is in that meeting. And we're actually recording the meeting. It's the only type of meeting on campus that we record. The employee is allowed a representative at that meeting. And the appointing authority usually takes some time. The information is gathered at that meeting. Due process is given to the employee. They get to tell their side of the story. And typically, shortly thereafter, the appointing authority provides their final decision in writing. It could be they choose to take no action, perhaps they're giving a corrective action, or perhaps it is a disciplinary action. So types of disciplinary action for classified staff: suspension without pay, which we rarely recommend because all you're doing is sidelining an employee for, say, 30 days or so. And then, so you're down an employee. Another type of disciplinary action is demotion, which we rarely, if ever, recommend because oftentimes there's nowhere to demote that person to. And we've also found that historically, when you demote someone in this fashion, that person is really, really, really unhappy in their newly demoted position, and that only causes more problems there. The most common form of disciplinary action is a temporary pay reduction, so a small percentage of a paycheck over a certain length of a finite period of time. And termination is a type of discipline for classified staff. Just going to pause for a moment, see if we have any questions. Okay. Classified staff have a couple or a few formal processes that they can raise concerns about how they've been managed. There's a grievance process. A classified staff member can grieve just about anything. It's easier to name the things they can't grieve. They can't grieve a disciplinary action, and they can't grieve their performance evaluation. But pretty much anything else, a corrective action, not saying hi in the morning, okay, not being invited to the birthday party in the break room, that can be a grievance. And it's there's a time limit involved, must be filed within 10 days of the incident. And that is adjudicated on campus. Okay, there are steps to it. The first step is within the department. And the second step, if the employee is still not satisfied with step one, they can go to step two. And that's actually with the CHRO. Classified staff can appeal certain measures. They can appeal disciplinary actions. They can appeal step two grievance decisions, retaliation claims, director's decisions regarding comparative analysis, and forced or coerced resignations, layoff procedures, and administrative discharge. Administrative discharge is when an employee is termed for exhaustion of leave. And if a classified employee is unhappy with their performance evaluation, they can initiate a dispute resolution process. I see Angela's question. Performance improvement plans and letters expectation considered the same? Okay. So, Angela, I would say performance improvement plans and letters of expectations are, I wouldn't say formal or informal, because to the employee receiving them, they seem awfully formal. But we consider them to be, the best way I can define it is that they are not disciplinary actions. They are something short of that. They're kind of akin to corrective actions. The letter certainly reads very formally, but it's informal in terms of it doesn't impact pay, or it's not a demotion. There's no suspension of pay or salary reduction or FT reduction or anything like that.
The reason I asked, Brad, is on your previous slide, it says informal, which struck me as strange. That's why I asked the question. Informal letter of instruction. So that's why I was asking the question.
Right. Yeah. And a letter of instruction actually doesn't even go in the employee's personnel file. So that's how informal that one is. But, to the employee receiving it, it's going to feel awfully formal. But thanks for the question. Just a couple of state personnel board rules to bring to your attention. 5.6 is the exhaustion of leave rule. 6.8 pertains to corrective actions. 6.9 is the notice of an upcoming 6.10 meeting. 6.10 talks about that meeting and talks about disciplinary action. And rule 7.4 is about job abandonment. Job abandonment for classified staff, and we actually apply the same principle to staff and faculty. If an employee no calls and no shows for 3 consecutive days, you can construe that as job abandonment. But we prefer that you are trying to get a hold of that employee during those 3 days. So if we're terminating them, we can say, well, you no called, no showed for 3 days. We were trying like heck to get a hold of you, and we still couldn't, therefore we're terminating you. So please work with us on anything that falls into this category. So for staff and faculty, this is, especially the top part, is going to be very similar. Okay. And we want all of you to really feel emboldened and confident to the degree that you feel comfortable and confident to manage these informal processes within your own units. Certainly, I'm not saying don't reach out to us if you're stuck or if you need help, but don't feel like that you're obligated to reach out to us the moment you have any sort of a problem. So again, for just as I explained for classified staff, if there's an issue that comes up, supervisors should meet with the employee. And just in generally speaking, these meetings should be in as close to real time of the issue as possible. So don't wait until the one-on-one that's happening in a month or two. Don't wait until the performance evaluation discussion. Try to have it in as close to the moment as possible. Supervisor should describe the issue or incident that's of concern, get the employee's perspective, set the expectation for each concern, follow it up with an email. Okay. And if the issue persists, you can pursue a performance improvement plan, which we get asked a lot, what's the difference between a performance improvement plan and a letter of expectation? I'd say the difference is what is the level of patience that the supervisor has, or how long of a runway, or how much time do you want to give this employee to improve? So if there's more patience, longer runway, that would be a performance improvement plan. Typically 3, 6, or 9 months in length. Letter of expectation, typically 1 to 3 months in length. The two documents read very similarly, but one has greater urgency to it, and we'll help you write either of those documents. We insist that we help you write either of those documents. And in terms of disciplinary action, if an employee does not improve after getting one of those measures, or if you've done enough sort of documentation internally, perhaps, looking at the gold bar there, if you have a stack of emails memorializing discussions that you've had, that stack of emails could equate to a letter of expectation. I mean, you could have been really just tracking the same thing in the same way over a period of time and arrive at a decision where perhaps you want to terminate the employee or pursue a suspension without pay or demote them or lower their FTE. So any of these discussions should happen with our team. Staff and faculty do not have as many rights as classified staff, but here's how they can potentially resolve issues. For their performance evaluation or a letter of expectation or a performance improvement plan, the staff or faculty can write a rebuttal to that action, which is basically just a document that they generate, that they write, they author it, and it gets attached to the action in question. Oh, good question from Jean. How long does an LOE remain in effect? You'll never see this written anywhere, Jean, because we like it to be somewhat flexible, but consider it in effect for about a calendar year, because any longer than that, 12 months is a long time to observe performance. And so within those 12 months, the supervisor will have conducted an evaluation of that employee in that time as well. So the longer you go, it's almost like the letter of expectation gets one-upped by more recent feedback. So like a performance evaluation. So we generally say that the letter's in effect for about 12 months, because anything longer than that, it gets harder to justify holding somebody accountable for it. If the issue is persisting that long, hopefully you're talking to us about it, but perhaps you're doing a new letter, or like I said, perhaps that performance evaluation has been given and is providing more recent feedback, and perhaps there's documentation that comes on the heels of the performance evaluation. I hope I answered your question. Faculty have appeal rights, and School of Medicine is a bit unique in this. Faculty can appeal performance ratings through established grievance procedures. School of Medicine has established procedures, and in School of Medicine, faculty member can notify their department chair in writing and dean of School of Medicine that they want to appeal their performance rating. That must happen within 5 days after receiving notice of the rating. And then they begin a dialogue with the dean in discussing that. And it typically takes a little while. So getting into different types of separations. So the gray one those are generated by the employee. Those are the voluntary types of separations, the best kind of separations. Employees leaving on their own accord. They are improving their situation, transferring perhaps within the campus, within the university, or they're retiring. These other boxes are involuntary separations: termination for cause, exhaustion of leave, layoff. Those are the 3 types of layoffs, or job abandonment. So we would like to be involved in any and all of those that you're looking at. And what we're going to be looking at, if you involve us, are potential risks involved with that separation. So here's some things, here's some kind of the lens that we look through. We look for different sorts of protected class concerns. Has this employee raised discrimination claims, harassment claims, hostile work environment claims? Do they have an active complaint? Did they just make a complaint? Are they on a protected form of leave? Did they request protected leave? Did they have an FML qualifying situation and we, the collective we, kind of missed the boat, didn't offer FML and family when we perhaps would have or could have or should have? That's a risk. Was there an accommodation request that the employee made that we didn't refer to the ADA coordinator? Or are they in the middle of the interactive process and you want to terminate them? Again, sort of, or, the argument coming out of that, we would not want the employee to have the argument of, I made an accommodation request and nobody connected me to the ADA coordinator. I was never accommodated and then I was fired. That's not a good look for us. If our timeline, our documentation, our ability to sort of describe why we did what we did falls short, that could be a risk. And if in the course of a supervisor addressing performance concerns with an employee, if the expectations aren't clear, okay? In other words, can the employee make the argument after they're terminated, I didn't know what was expected of me. The expectation was not clear and I was fired anyway. Okay, that's not a good look for us. Okay. So any questions on performance management, progressive discipline, separation? I went through a lot there, but now I know that there was an ask that we touch on conflict resolution a bit, and I'm happy to talk about this some more, but here are, in my opinion, the best resources available to pursue conflict resolution or get better at managing conflict. So the trainings that I would point you to, or a supervisor or leader to get better conflict resolution, to get better at difficult discussions. We offer crucial conversations about once every quarter or so. And if you take that, then you can take the 2.0 course, which is crucial accountability. At this point in time, I should probably be getting endorsement fees from Vital Smarts for that. Deanna, it should also get an endorsement.
It is my goal that every supervisor in the School of Medicine take crucial conversations, but I don't know. I can't make that happen without you guys, so.
Right. Yep, and like I said, it's back given quarterly and the classes are almost always full. Crucial accountability, it's only given about once or twice a year because it's a smaller pool of people who can take it. You have to have taken crucial conversations, and there's only about 3 people on campus who are certified to train it. So we just gave it a few weeks ago. May give it again later in the year, but I echo what Deanna said. I think all supervisors should take this. And for mediation, okay, supervisor and employee having an argument or a disagreement, or it's an intractable situation where 2 people are not getting along, the best resource on campus is a rather new one, the Office of Adaptable Resolution. And Will DeWeese is the director of that office. He used to be the director of the Office of Equity, and he has established this office. They are in building 500, sorry, Fitzsimmons building on the ground floor, actually in our former space, the former morgue. Will is down there, and they are open for business for mediation. So you can refer to people having conflict to will, and he will take them aside and work through resolution there. The Ombuds office is still a resource for mediation. Melissa has hired a second ombudsman who is mostly downtown, but it can be shared with this campus. And Ombuds is a bit different. A lot of employees go there, and it is a 100% confidential office. But I would point you to the Office of Adaptable Resolution if you're looking for mediation. More crucial conversations, positive feedback. I concur. I also just wanted to run through a couple of policies that our office oversees and owns as far as potentially conducting investigations on them or making policy determinations on. So one of them is the anti-violence policy, that's 4005. And this pertains to basically any sort of workplace violence concern. Prohibits verbal and physical aggression, attacks, threats, harassment, intimidation, other disruptive behavior in any form, in any media. Okay, so this could be a text message, Slack chat, Teams chat. It could be a picture at somebody's desk. It could be a scribble on a notebook. It could be a t-shirt, which causes or could cause a reasonable person to fear physical harm by an individual or groups against any persons or property. Okay, physical harm being probably the key term there. So here's some examples of behaviors that might run afoul of this policy. Intimidating, threatening, or hostile statements or actions, gestures that convey threats or use of fighting words, uttering ethnic, racial, or sexual epithets, threatening comments about or references to violent events and or behaviors, waving fists, pushing, stalking, bullying, hazing, destruction of property, throwing objects at people or property, vandalism, arson, sabotage. Now, this policy is unique to our campus, actually. This is a CU Anschutz policy, and it preempted the workplace bullying policy. That's why bullying is still in the language. But before the workplace bullying policy came along, we had this policy that covered anything that looked like bullying. I just want to make sure everyone is aware of, sort of emergent sort of situations. So obviously imminent danger, call 911. That's going to go on campus. That's going to go to our campus police on campus. If you call 911 from a cell phone, or if you're off campus, there's the direct line to our police. If you're off campus, it'll go to a different jurisdiction. Our faculty and staff threat assessment team, or FAST team, is standing by for any sort of emergent situation that you come across where someone is a threat to themselves or threat to others, or is gravely disabled, in other words, unable to care for themselves. So if you're finding yourself becoming aware of a situation like this, here is our email, here's our phone number. We also have an online reporting form. And the FAST team is comprised of individuals from Central HR, University Police, University Council, Department of Psychiatry, who will look at a case in real time emergently. And we meet regularly anyway, just to talk about issues on campus or cases that are still ongoing. Any questions about any of that? Yes. What is the expected time frame for a response from the FAST team? Jean, we will get back to you as soon as possible. For some reason, Most of our calls come in at 4:59 on Friday. We will still we will respond in as close to real time as possible, but we have we got a couple of calls kind of over the holiday break that weren't, that we got to within kind of a 24, 48 hours. They come in over a weekend. That can be a bit of a challenge, but for the most part, we're talking about, real-time response.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. For students, we have the care team, that there is overlap between the two teams, and they're comprised of some of the same people, but that is your resource for threat to self, threat to others for students. Policy 5059 is workplace bullying, which I mentioned was previously covered by the anti-violence policy, but its own policy was developed here about 5-6 years ago. I'm not going to sort of go through all these definitions per se. I'll let you read for yourself, but I want to point your direction to this last bullet. Okay. A supervisor can engage in workplace bullying if they abuse or misuse power in the exercise of authority, supervision, or guidance. However, criticism, complaints, and negative feedback are not considered bullying when they are reasonable and when they are directly addressing issues of workplace performance and/or conduct. Okay, so in short, the employee who comes to you and says, my supervisor just told me to come to work on time every day because I've been late, I was just bullied. Okay, that likely falls under this definition of reasonableness addressing of performance issues and/or conduct. But that is typically learned through investigation. But I just wanted to make you aware of that one specifically. So
we have a question in the chat about how to deal with if performance feedback comes as gossip. Natalie or Nayali, do you want to come off mute and explain that a little bit more?
Hi. Yeah, it's like sometimes when we send the performance surveys, the feedback is it's not like really as per the guidelines, I can say, and the feedback would come as, I've heard from so and so this happened, so and so. So it looks like kind of I don't know, I cannot take that as serious feedback at that time, but I still take it because it came to us. So how to deal with that? Should we reach out to those people individually, or should we send just a kind of a newsletter or something for trainings that can help them for the constructive feedback? What can be the path?
So to ask you about that, the feedback or the gossip is coming through through survey results?
Through survey results, yeah.
Okay. Well, I would say that that's a whole lot different than the sort of gossip that we hear about a lot, which is, people chatting in the break room or people chatting at the water cooler about performance ratings or about salary, about merit pay, or about people's performance. So if you have a specific example, I'd be happy to look at it. But I would say if somebody's filling out a survey, well, so gossip in general, I look at it this way. If it's causing disruption, then it's a problem. Okay, so the person who's kind of going around and asking people like, what did you get on your performance evaluation? Or what percentage merit pay increase did you get? I only got 2%. What did you get? Or I got a 3 out of 5 on my evaluation. What did you get? And then just going around and kind of stirring people up like that. To me, that's a performance issue when it's causing disruption. And when you're having people come to you saying, you know, hey, Brad is going around and asking about salary and stuff like that. I'm just trying to get my work done. Okay. That's, you know, I sort of look at the, you know, the impact of what the gossip is. It's causing disruption. That's a performance issue. If it's within a survey, that to me feels a little bit different. That feels like it's kind of safeguarded from being gossip, larger gossip, that is, you know, disrupting employees. But I want to make sure I'm speaking to your question.
Okay, that's great. And is there any trainings for constructive criticism or something like that that you can share?
Absolutely, yeah. The ones we mentioned, crucial conversations, and especially crucial accountability, is outstanding at giving feedback. The performance management training that we give about quarterly, we talk about giving feedback there. And you're also welcome to contact one of us about a specific situation. We spend a lot of time with supervisors helping them have these conversations where they're giving feedback in a way that that lands as best as possible with the employee. So that's where we do a lot of our best work, frankly. So feel free to contact, put us in touch with a supervisor who needs to give feedback like that.
That's good. Thank you.
Welcome. Couple other mentions about workplace bullying. Retaliation against employees making good faith reports is prohibited. There's a retaliation clause in basically all of our policies, but this one pertains to bullying. False reports of workplace bullying that are found to have been made intentionally are also a violation of this policy. Okay. Well, I just wanted to touch on reference checks for a moment. I can't go a week without somebody saying, you know, hey, I've been contacted about a reference. I don't know what to say. Can I just not give the reference? Well, yes, that is an option. We're not going to force anyone to do that necessarily. But if we're talking about something that's within the university, especially something that's within our campus, we do want you to engage in that reference check, especially if it's about an employee that you were having performance issues with, and now a different department is thinking about hiring them. We want you to engage in that reference check. If you are seeking out reference information on a candidate, talk to their current supervisor, talk to their prior supervisor, talk to one of you, the business partner that's embedded there, to get some more knowledge about the applicant. We are permitted to do that within the CU family. Okay, so we don't need the employee's permission to contact their current supervisor if it's on-campus CU situation. And that, frankly, that's where a lot of reference processes get held up. Prospective hiring authorities think that they can't sort of, broach a reference check with the current supervisor because the candidate said, please don't contact my current supervisor. We want to respect that within reason, but if that's the missing link in your decision, okay, go ahead and contact the current or previous supervisor. So the most important thing is this third bullet here. When providing a reference, be factual in your responses. It's the best way to avoid getting tripped up in any way, shape, or form is just be factual. The most common question that you'll get is, would you hire this person again? Okay. But you may get questions like, did you have to give this person a corrective action? Did you ever have to discipline this employee? Okay, just be factual in your responses, and you don't need to be concerned about, repercussions coming back to you. A case study to just kind of emphasize why you don't want to fall short in this process is we observed a department who hired an employee, and this was their 4th stop on campus. The previous 3 stops they had issues with. They were terminated for performance from 2 of those 3, and they were having current issues in the 3rd unit when they applied for this position. The hiring manager in the 4th department, the one that's thinking about hiring them, didn't call any references on campus because the candidate requested on their application to not have their supervisors contacted. The employee was hired, immediate performance issues ensued, and but it took a while. It took a lot of time, energy, effort, and probably some pain on behalf of that department number 4 to move on there, but it could have been avoided pretty easily.
So we have a question about, we're under the impression that we couldn't answer or provide extra information outside of the questions that are answered in a reference check. Is that true?
So that's from Anton. Outside of the questions, Anton, are you talking about like a skill survey?
Well, no, like I think I'm kind of more referring to like when a manual reference is conducted. For example, like if it's not if performance issues aren't specifically asked about, we can't really go outside of kind of the parameters of the question and go, unless they say, do you have anything else you would like to provide? That's kind of what I'm getting at. I always thought we kind of had to kind of directly answer the questions that were being asked of us in a reference check.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you. So I would say, the baseline is it's your discretion on whether to participate or not. We really want you to, because, frankly, we see some bad pennies get passed around campus when people choose to not participate in these reference checks. Now, the extent to which one participates is also up to the person providing the reference. So you can kind of plead the 5th, even potentially, on some questions. Would you hire this person again? I choose not to answer. Okay. But you can also volunteer information outside of those questions that are being answered. You just want to be sure that you're being factual in that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so that's kind of the slide portion of the discussion, but Michelle and I are here in case there's broader discussions, or perhaps people have cases to sort of to talk about, situations to talk about. We're here for you.
It's Kim Gall, and I can't type fast enough. I was wondering if there's ever a time when Central can flag someone who's been involuntary terminated as not eligible for rehire. Say if they broke like a major policy, like a bullying policy or the anti-violence policy.
Sure. So that is something that can be specifically done at the time of termination. So there is a flag in HCM for not eligible for rehire, and it's a termination reason code. And so that is a decision when there's kind of a more egregious offense like you're describing, where typically it's a discussion with departments and central HR and university council as to whether it sort of meets or is worthy of that sort of criteria. And we had one just recently where somebody violated was found in violation of Office of Equity policy, and we made them ineligible for rehire. We also had a case earlier this year where an employee was engaging in stalking, and was terminated for cause made them ineligible for rehire. But it is pretty rare. But if you're considering that, it's generally, like I said, discussion between department, central HR, and university council, and it's a special code in HCM that I think it prevents or it puts a stop on hiring somebody in HCM if that code is present.
And at what point would the hiring manager or the business partner know that? Would it be up to us to reach out to someone to ask?
Well, it's within HCM and perhaps the personnel file, because typically in the termination letter to that person will say you've been terminated, typical termination letter, but it will include phrasing in there about being ineligible for rehire. That's not 100% of the cases though, because sometimes we make somebody ineligible for rehire when we're going through a separation agreement with them. Like we're negotiating their separation, but we don't want this person coming back. So we want that in the agreement and we put it in. So it's tricky, Kim, because in terms of where a business partner can find it, it's HCM is really the keeper of that knowledge, but sometimes it's sort of just the collective knowledge of the people involved as well to be like, oh yeah, I remember that person, we made them ineligible for rehire. So but in terms of hiring somebody, you're going to see it in HCM as a termination reason code.
Brad, you alluded to something that I was going to ask you to bring up, but like where you can't put term for cause in HCM because of, a resignation or a separation agreement, that's when it makes it harder, right? Because it's really just in the personnel file where it says ineligible for rehire. So we don't see it in HCM. And I think it obviously makes it harder to know. Yeah. And who we check on, does that mean we check on everyone that we hire?
Well, Lindsay is referring to a very specific and very recent case. I think I found a workaround for that, Lindsay. I'm going to put that person resigned through a separation agreement, subsequently found in violation of policy, subsequently deemed ineligible for rehire, and we're going to go ahead and put them in HCM as being terminated and ineligible for rehire, but resignation is going to be sitting in their personnel file. So that one I'm going to have to keep a close eye on because we don't want anyone to think that they were terminated for cause because that's technically not what happens, but we also don't want anyone hiring them because they're ineligible for rehire.
They're all kind of nuanced, each case. Yeah. Thanks, Brad.
Sure.
Does anyone else have any questions for Brad or Michelle? Going once, going twice. Thanks, everybody. Next month, we're going to have potluck. So we're going to hopefully have somebody from risk management out. And then we're also going to be talking about additional pay and student workers. So we hope to see everyone next month. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Any last minute questions?
Did
All
you
right,
freeze?
thanks. Did I freeze? No, you froze. Okay, I'm gonna end.